Long simmering, the conflict burst into the open on the 3rd day of the 3rd moon of 129 AC, when the ailing, bedridden King Viserys I Targaryen closed his eyes for a nap in the Red Keep of King's Landing and died without waking. His body was discovered by a serving man at the hour of the bat, when it was the king's custom to take a cup of hippocras. The servant ran to inform Queen Alicent, whose apartments were on the floor below the king's. Septon Eustace, writing on these events some years later, points out that the manservant delivered his dire tidings directly to the Queen, and her alone, without raising a general alarm. Eustace does not believe this was wholly fortuitous. The king's death had been anticipated for some time, he argues, and Queen Alicent and her party, the so-called Greens, had taken care to instruct all of Viserys' guards and servants in what to do when the day came. The dwarf mushroom suggests a more sinister scenario, whereby Queen Alicent hurried King Viserys on his way with a pinch of poison in his hippocras. It must be noted that Mushroom was not in King's Landing the night the king died, but rather on Dragonstone, in service with Princess Rhaenyra. Queen Alicent went at once to the king's bedchamber, accompanied by Sir Criston Cole, Lord Commander of the King's Guard. Once they had confirmed that Viserys was dead, Her Grace ordered his room sealed and placed under guard. The serving man who had found the king's body was taken into custody, to make certain he did not spread the tale. Sir Criston returned to White Sword Tower and sent his brothers of the King's Guard to summon the members of the King's small council. It was the hour of the owl. Then, as now, the sworn brotherhood of the King's Guard consisted of 7 knights, men of proven loyalty and undoubted prowess, who had taken solemn oaths to devote their lives to defending the king's person and kin. Only 5 of the White Cloaks were in King's Landing at the time of Viserys' death: Sir Criston himself, Sir Eric Cargill, Sir Rickard Thorne, Sir Stephen Darklyn, and Sir Willis Fell. Sir Eric Cargill, twin to Sir Eric, and Sir Lawrence Marbrand, with Princess Rhaenyra on Dragonstone, remained unaware and uninvolved as their brothers-in-arms went forth into the night to rouse the members of the small council from their beds. The council convened in the Queen's apartments within Maegor's Holdfast. Gathering in the Queen's chambers as the body of her lord husband grew cold above were Queen Alicent herself, her father, Sir Otto Hightower, Hand of the King, Sir Criston Cole, Lord Commander of the King's Guard, Grand Maester Orwyle, Lord Lyman Beesbury, Master of Coin, a man of 80, Sir Tyland Lannister, Master of Ships, brother to the Lord of Casterly Rock, Larys Strong, called Larys Clubfoot, Lord of Harrenhal, Master of Whisperers, and Lord Jasper Wilde, called Ironrod, Master of Laws. Grand Maester Monken dubs this gathering the Green Council in his true telling. Grand Maester Orwyle opened the meeting by reviewing the customary tasks and procedures required at the death of a king. He said, "Septon Eustace should be summoned to perform the last rites and pray for the king's soul. A raven must needs be sent to Dragonstone at once to inform Princess Rhaenyra of her father's passing. Mayhaps Her Grace the Queen would care to write the message so as to soften these sad tidings with some words of condolence. The bells are always rung to announce the death of a king. Someone should see to that. And, of course, we must begin to make our preparations for Queen Rhaenyra's coronation." Sir Otto Hightower cut him off. "All this must needs wait," he declared, "until the question of succession is settled." As the king's hand, he was empowered to speak with the king's voice, even to sit the Iron Throne in the king's absence. Viserys had granted him the authority to rule over the 7 kingdoms, and, until such time as our new king is crowned, that rule would continue. "Until our new queen is crowned," someone said. In Grand Maester Monken's account, the words are Orwyle's, spoken softly, no more than a quibble. But Mushroom and Septon Eustace insist it was Lord Beesbury who spoke up, and in a waspish tone. "King," insisted Queen Alicent. "The Iron Throne by rights must pass to His Grace's eldest true-born son." The discussion that followed lasted nigh unto dawn, Grand Maester Monken tells us. Mushroom and Septon Eustace concur. In their accounts, only Lord Beesbury spoke on behalf of Princess Rhaenyra. The ancient Master of Coin, who had served King Viserys for the majority of his reign, and his grandfather Jaehaerys, the old king before him, reminded the council that Rhaenyra was older than her brothers and had more Targaryen blood, that the late king had chosen her as his successor, that he had repeatedly refused to alter the succession despite the pleadings of Queen Alicent and her greens, that hundreds of lords and landed knights had done obeisance to the princess in 105 AC and sworn solemn oaths to defend her rights. Grand Maester Orwyle's account differs only in that he puts many of these arguments into his own mouth rather than Beesbury's, but subsequent events suggest that was not so, as we shall see. But these words fell on ears made of stone. Sir Tyland pointed out that many of the lords who had sworn to defend the succession of Princess Rhaenyra were long dead. "It has been 24 years, he said. I myself swore no such oath. I was a child at the time. Ironrod, the Master of Laws, cited the Great Council of 101, and the old king's choice of Balon rather than Rhaenys in 92, then discoursed at length about Aegon the Conqueror and his sisters, and the hallowed Andal tradition wherein the rights of a true-born son always came before the rights of a mere daughter. So Otto reminded them that Rhaenyra's husband was none other than Prince Daemon, and we all know that one's nature. Make no mistake. Should Rhaenyra ever sit the Iron Throne, it will be Lord Fleabottom who rules us, a king consort as cruel and unforgiving as Maegor ever was. My own head will be the first cut off, I do not doubt, but your queen, my daughter, will soon follow." Queen Alicent echoed him. "Nor will they spare my children," she declared. "Aegon and his brothers are the king's true-born sons, with a better claim to the throne than her brood of bastards. Daemon will find some pretext to put them all to death, even Helena and her little ones. One of these Strongs put out Aemon's eye, never forget. He was a boy, aye, but the boy is the father to the man, and bastards are monstrous by nature." Sir Criston Cole spoke up. Should the princess reign, he reminded them, Jacaerys Valerian would rule after her. 7 save this realm if we seat a bastard on the Iron Throne. He spoke of Rhaenyra's wanton ways, and the infamy of her husband. They will turn the Red Keep into a brothel. No man's daughter will be safe, nor any man's wife. Even the boys. We know what Laenor was. It is not recorded that Lord Larys Strong spoke a word during this debate, but that was not unusual. Though glib of tongue when need be, the Master of Whisperers hoarded his words like a miser hoarding coins, preferring to listen rather than talk. "If we do this," Grand Maester Orwyle cautioned the council, according to the true telling, "it must surely lead to war. The princess will not meekly stand aside, and she has dragons." "And friends," Lord Beesbury declared, "men of honour, who will not forget the vows they swore to her and her father. I am an old man, but not so old that I will sit here meekly whilst the likes of you plot to steal her crown." And so saying, he rose to go. As to what happened next, our sources differ. Grand Maester Orwyle tells us that Lord Beesbury was seized at the door by the command of Ser Otto Hightower and escorted to the dungeons. Confined to a black cell, he would in time perish of a chill whilst awaiting trial. Septon Eustace tells it elsewise. In his account, Sir Criston Cole forced Lord Beesbury back into his seat and opened his throat with a dagger. Mushroom charges Sir Criston with his lordship's death as well, but in his version, Cole grasped the old man by the back of his collar and flung him out a window, to die impaled upon the iron spikes in the dry moat below. All 3 chronicles agree on one particular. The first blood shed in the Dance of the Dragons belonged to Lord Lyman Beesbury, Master of Coin and Lord Treasurer of the 7 Kingdoms. No further dissent was heard after the death of Lord Beesbury. The rest of the night was spent making plans for the new king's coronation. It must be done quickly, all agreed, and drawing up lists of possible allies and potential enemies, should Princess Rhaenyra refuse to accept King Aegon's ascension. With the princess in confinement on Dragonstone about to give birth, Queen Alicent's greens enjoyed an advantage. The longer Rhaenyra remained ignorant of the king's death, the slower she would be to move. "Mayhaps the whore will die in childbirth," Queen Alicent is reported to have said, according to Mushroom. No ravens flew that night. No bells rang. Those servants who knew of the king's passing were sent to the dungeons. Sir Crispin Cole was given the task of taking into custody such blacks as remained at court, those lords and knights who might be inclined to favour Princess Rhaenyra. "Do them no violence, unless they resist," Sir Otto Hightower commanded. "Such men as bend the knee and swear fealty to King Aegon shall suffer no harm at our hands." "And those who will not?" asked Grand Maester Orwyle. "Are traitors," said Ironrod, "and must die a traitor's death." Lord Larys Strong, Master of Whisperers, then spoke for the first and only time. "Let us be the first to swear," he said, "lest there be traitors here amongst us." Drawing his dagger, the clubfoot drew it across his palm. "A blood oath," he urged, "to bind us all together, brothers unto death." And so each of the conspirators slashed their palms and clasped hands with one another, swearing brotherhood. Queen Alicent, alone amongst them, was excused from the oath on account of her womanhood.